I want to share some general thoughts with you about how you might. I know it's kind of late in the semester, but I've met with a number of students over the last week, not just in this class, but in several of my classes. People at this point in the semester sometimes become concerned about their course grade, and they finally come around and want to talk about how they can do better in the course. And after talking to a half dozen people or so across all of my classes, I've kind of come to the conclusion that maybe we ought to invest a few minutes here just in today's class to talk a little bit about how you might deal with note-taking and using your notes for study processes. And I'm going to use the topic that we're beginning here on civil rights. After examining their notes, I had several people come by, and I said, well, let me see the notes that you take in class. And then so I look at the notes and ask them. Then I ask them to tell me, well, how do you use these when you're studying? It became obvious to me that in a number of the cases that their whole study process was geared towards memorization of detail. Okay, and that's, in my view. If you have a process that you think works for you, particularly at this late point in the semester, I'm not going to, stay with it. If you're satisfied with the results that you're getting and you think this process, whatever process you have works for you, then by all means, keep using that. But if you're, one of those people who say, well, I'm not really getting the results that I want, and, maybe I ought to change things up a little bit. Well, here's something that you might consider. This course and other courses like it, I think it serves you well if, sort of right out of the gate, you understand that memorization of factual details is sort of the most rudimentary level of learning. Okay? What we're really trying to do in this course, and I think many other liberal arts courses, is get you to think at higher levels about the material. So in addition to just remembering facts, okay, and remembering definitions of terms and so on, you want to understand concepts. And more importantly, you want to understand the linkages among concepts, how this idea connects with this idea, and what are the major themes that we're dealing with in this block of material. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Here's what I suggested to the people who came by, and this is what I'm going to suggest to you all. One of the things that people are telling me is that, well, they don't really have enough time to get down everything that I put up on the screen. And my initial response to that is, so? Okay, I'll try not to be so flip about it. I understand your impulse to get everything that's down on the screen. But when you try to transcribe every single word on the screen, at a minimum, you lose context. You lose the context for what it all means and what the connections are and so on. So what I would encourage you instead to do is, what I've done is gone through here and highlighted key words. Okay? So that's what you take down. For instance, this slide here, which is what I would normally put up, and it wouldn't have sort of the blue font, you take down, sort of the key words, and what you end up with is, a set of notes that looks sort of like this, and where you take down those key words, and then as we're talking about it in class, you put down a few points that provide you some context, right, for Article 2. Because look, here's the deal. This information right here is just, an actual direct, it's the actual passage from Article 1, Section 2. So transcribing that, I think, really doesn't help you out a lot. If you can at least take down Article 1, Section 2 and 3/5 compromise, now if you must have the verbiage, the exact verbiage there, you can always go Google that, right? What does Article 1, Section 2 actually say? You Google that, and this is what you're going to get. Representative and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states according. You don't have to transcribe that while trying to take notes in class. Right? Does everybody understand the point? Just take down like the key, as this stuff appears on the screen, just take down key words. that will give you enough prompt so that you can go back when you're preparing for an exam, when you're studying this information, you can go back and sort of fill in the details in this fashion. Right? So you can sort of provide whatever points of context for Article 1, Section 2, the Three-Fifths Compromise, Article 1, Section 9 here. You took down this sort of thought question that we are going to talk about in class here in just a few minutes. And then here's the sort of additional thing that I suggested to each one of these people that I've talked with over the last week or so. On the facing page, okay, leave like the facing page in your notebook blank. And then after class is over and you've gone back and you've tried to, sort of fill in all the details in your notes, think about that, sort of take a moment, pause, and think about it. What are the main themes that you got from this, that we're getting out of this chunk of material? And then always leave, I would suggest, always leave down sort of at the bottom of the page, the bottom third of the page, some room for you to write questions. These are questions that you have. These are questions that you have about things that aren't clear to you, that you just don't understand. And actually write down the questions. Don't just think to yourself, oh, I don't really understand, what the Three-Fifths Compromise means. Actually write down, what does the Three-Fifths Compromise mean? I mean, that's a poor example, but that's just since that was what we were looking at a moment ago, I used that, right? Actually write that question down. Because now you can, first of all, now you won't forget it. Okay? You won't forget the question. But more importantly, you can actually ask me the question. And generally speaking, it's relatively easy to get answers to questions, but you have to ask the question. I often say to students that I've been doing my job a long time, and over all that time, and I will probably be doing it forever because I don't really see myself being able to afford to retire. So until I drop dead, I'll never develop the ability to glean a question from a confused look on a student's face. I know that there are questions because I see the confused looks, okay? But I can't, from that confused look, pull a question out. You have to learn to articulate the questions. And it's a skill. It's like any other skill. It's like shooting free throws. It's like playing leads on the guitar. Any of you here a musician, a guitarist or a pianist? Or you don't just sit down at the piano and start, unless you're some sort of prodigy. You don't just sit down at the piano and start playing these, beautiful symphonies, or you don't sit down with a guitar and start shredding the keyboard. You have to practice. You have to practice scales, which is drudgery. Nobody likes practicing scales. If I remember my music lessons from when I was a kid, nobody likes practicing scales or anything like that. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you practice the skill, the more you hone it, and the more it becomes sort of your second nature. I think that asking questions in a course like good, relevant questions in a course like this is much the same sort of thing. Initially, it's difficult, and you may think to yourself, I don't really understand enough to even know how to articulate the question. I've gotten that from students in the past. I don't really know what my questions are. I just know I don't understand. Well, you've got to start writing questions. Actually write the questions. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then just like playing a musical instrument or shooting free throws or anything else that involves a skill, there's a point at which you sort of hit this point and it all sort of comes together. Right? I think that is really a key to being successful in this course and courses like it. Because so much of what we do in these courses is about understanding concepts, linkages among concepts, connections among concepts, etc. So, for example, just to sort of finish this off, then we'll get to the actual material. Consider sort of a more thorough version. We go through a bunch of stuff in class. We're going to talk a little bit here over the next couple of class meetings about the civil rights agenda during the Reconstruction period. So you've taken we go through a number of slides where we talk about civil rights acts passed between 1866 and 1875, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, the Reconstruction Act of 1867, the Enforcement Act of 1870, the Civil Rights Act of 1871, the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, the Civil Rights Act of 1875. You know, you take your supplemental points down, etc. You write over here what your main themes are. And, you know, I even envision some process where, like, okay, out of all this, you know, what was the point of talking about all of this? Oh, well, you know, you sort of make a note of that over here. And I even, you know, I'd be drawing arrows and things like that, connecting things back together. So, again, I'm sharing this with you. I don't mean to insult anybody who, you know, is happy with their approach to taking notes. As I said, whatever works for you, continue to use it. But I have talked to enough people here over the last week or so where I thought it might be useful to come in and share some of the things that I've been talking with you, some of the things that I've been talking about with them. Okay? So take that for whatever it's worth.